Hi, friends. Welcome to Sibyl's Lab of Cartomantics. I'm Amelia Joy.
I'm Danielle.
And we're doing a little bit of a chatty video today. Danielle, why don't you tell us what we're going to chat about?
We are going to gab it up on the topic of approaching tarot with beginner's mind. So, what do we even mean about that? We have 5 questions, the way we like to do. And how do we do beginner's mind if it's something that it's worth doing for making that argument? So, we're going to start with a very simple and direct question for people who wonder what on earth we're talking about, who like us but don't know what it is we're doing. What does it mean to approach tarot with beginner's mind? What is it we're up to right now, today, in this video? And I'm going to throw it at you first, Amelia, since I'm asking the question.
Okay. So I didn't take notes on this. I was like, some of our gap videos I do take notes on because I want to be really clear about what I say. I let these questions roll around in my head over the last few days. So I was thinking about beginner's mind and coming to tarot with beginner's mind. And I really think that for me, at least, when I think about wanting to come to the cards with a beginner's mind, as a student, right? So as a student of tarot, as a learner of tarot, when I think about wanting to come to the cards in such a way, I think about kind of letting go of all of the things that I think I already know about tarot and being open to my preconceived ideas. No matter how long I've been studying and learning, being open to those being challenged. To me, that is beginner's mind, because I might drop everything that I know, but in the back of my head, kind of roll my eyes at certain things because, oh, well, that doesn't line up with what I think tarot is. But being really open to my ideas and my kind of synthesis of learning being challenged with new information. To me, I think that's beginner's mind for me.
I think that you're onto something. I think you agree with me on this. There are different ways to approach tarot with beginner's mind. There are approaching cards that we're familiar with and embracing them on that basis. So I know what a 6 of Cups is, it looks like, in the Rider-Waite-Smith. But if I approach that card with beginner's mind, I'm going to ask my brain to set aside the meaning of cup, the meaning of flower, like all of that stuff, that baggage I bring to a card that I know, and not necessarily asking myself to pretend that I haven't seen it before, but to be open to whatever it is happening in that card, to see it with new eyes. That is fun beginner's mind for me. That is like the art appreciator beginner's mind. That's why it's fruitful and beautiful for me to go into an art museum that I've been in before. So there's something really delightful about that. As I was thinking about this and what I wanted to talk about, I thought about the beginner's mind that is more difficult for me, that is less embraceable to me, and that is embracing beginner's mind as I approach tarot decks that ask me to wipe clean what tarot means. So if a deck has convinced me that it owns the word tarot because it has the very basics that I assume a tarot deck has, which is roughly 78 to 78 plus a couple cards and some different suits and, approximate sized collection of majors. If I accept that it's up to something called tarot and that deck asks me to set aside everything else that I know about tarot, sometimes I find that very difficult. It not only difficult, because sometimes it can be difficult to come to the 6 of Cups with beginner's mind, but not fun. Not, challenging, and I come with really cold feet rather than I'm excited to embrace beginner's mind with the art. So I find I did take notes because I was really struggling with exactly what I meant by this. And this is what I wrote about this. When I approach this topic from the perspective of resistance, when the esoteric correspondences so deviate from any familiar notions of tarot that I have to suspend everything else that I know, that I'm conversant with. Like, it makes me fussy. Let's go with that adorable way of putting it. It can make me fussy. And the thing that's ridiculous, and that we'll get into, is like, no one's making me do this. Like, I don't know, it hasn't gone to my head making me do something with a deck that challenges me in this way. So that's when it's interesting, when we kind of corner ourselves or ask ourselves to do something that's that we resist. Why do it at all? I will take us to our next question. We'll see if something else to mention there.
Well, no, I think, yes, I do have something to mention there, because I think you and I are so different in a lot of ways in how we approach tarot. Like, I am, like, you talking about esoteric correspondences. I am not as well versed in those as you, and I am also kind of the belief that, like, I don't latch on to one particular way of esoteric correspondences with tarot, because I see them vary across traditions, right? And I also am kind of, here's the thing about me as an Enneagram 4, I am such a challenger. If somebody tells me that the Two of Swords is the moon in Libra, I'm like, okay, why? Make a case for it. Why? And so there are certain things that, like, I have no problem kind of being fluid in my approach. I have the opposite problem where I find resistance to beginner's mind in tarot is when, and we brought some examples, and one of my examples is like really gonna make this shine. When there's like an insistence that tarot isn't fluid, because my approach to reading cards is so, I love a TDM. We all know this. I love, the open reading style, that sort of thing. And that's not to say that I don't have a symbolic system or a symbolic language that I speak with the cards. It's that solid symbolic language is predisposed to flexibility. Like, its entire existence is dependent upon the flexibility of the cards and how they are placed on the table with other cards. But when I approach a tarot that says, no, this is what tarot is, and it has all of these things, and you need to know all of these things in order to read tarot, I'm like, no, you can't make me. And that's when I'm really kind of forced to have that beginner's mind, which is like feeling like I'm relearning something. But I don't want to. That's my resistance. That's my sticking point with beginner's mind.
I think so. Our second question that kind of goes into that, what's challenging about bringing a beginner's mind? I am happy to, and we study tarot together, like decks that we don't know. There's something I think that both of us are like gaga for an opportunity to study a deck that we don't know, if the art is right, like if it hits the sweet spot. For me, there are a few things that get really difficult. If I feel like the art is attractive to me for some reason, so it feels like it's doing something interesting, but not attractive because I think it's pretty, like I find it aversive or confronting, that's difficult. And I could just say, I don't like this deck, it's not for me. And of course I say that with most decks, right? That like, if it's not for me, it's not for me. And Lord knows there are enough decks that like, they're not mostly for me, as important as I am as a tarot consumer. But there are some decks that it feels like I need to do important work with, but not because the art is attractive. I feel like the art is aversive or confronting, like in a destabilizing way. So it's an invitation to beginner's mind to do some really uncomfortable work, when already I find beginner's mind a little uncomfortable anyway, like challenging and uncomfortable in a fruitful way. But it's like, what beginner's mind is for me is, hey, you're really good with tarot and you're fluent at it. Like, we're doing this because we know tarot, but insisting like, no, I don't. What if I didn't? Like, what does it mean to not know tarot anymore and to go into this with an open mind? So it's giving up the thing that's sort of, you know, embraceable and comfortable and like that I move around in with tarot. But I also find beginner's mind really difficult. I should say, because I'm happy, like I'm excited to go into the orbit of a deck that is crafting its own worldview. Like we've been talking about Kaz and Lar, not on the channel, but Kaz and Lar together when we're nerding out on tarot separately. Kaz and Lar Tarot, if you've never played with it, has its own very unique approach to correspondences. Like, I am so here for your wacky wild world. This is like, I have no idea what's going on, but there is an internal coherence that makes me feel like, all right, if I don't understand the internal consistency of something, because Kazanlar isn't all of the sevens are associated with Mars, he's like up to some spiritual magic. And so Mars goes where it's supposed to go. It's a deck that I really have no idea what your associations are about. And you're trying to tell me that they have meaning. If you cannot explain their coherence to me, my instinct is to resist. I think there's some like, I have a PhD ego about it, you know, like prove it to me. I'm fancy and smart. But man, it gets my back up. Like you have to explain to me how you came up with that correspondence. Except no, it doesn't. It doesn't really. And that's the thing about beginner's mind that's difficult. It makes me set aside my ego. That's actually
with that deck in particular, though, I have no problem with those correspondences because it feels like he doesn't insist that like those correspondences are tarot in the way some other esoteric systems insist that it's like no, this is what tarot is built upon. And I'm like, but where did you get that from? Like,
they're like sigils, right?
yeah, they do. No, I think for me, my challenge when I come up against and like I'll say this. I was telling Danielle like right before we hit record on this video that my annoying answer is that I approach tarot with a beginner's mind because I do like when I lay down like Marseille cards on the table, like my whole approach to tarot is that I'm not kind of bringing my stuff onto the cards and I'm letting the cards speak for themselves and I'm reading them as they appear on the table in front of me. But even that comes with its own stuff. I just released a whole course about like a corner of symbolic language within reading cards in that way. Like I have my stuff that I bring to the cards. It's just fits together in a different way, I guess. But for me, a lot of my approach to reading is based upon there's like a speed to it. There's a snappiness to it. And so my challenge when I am up against tarot that asks me to truly become a beginner in order to move within the world is a forced slowing down in a way that and not in a way that's like slow down, taking the cards, see that, but that is like so slow that I don't really know what I'm looking at first glance sort of thing. That slowing down can be agitating to me. And so I think like that's my big challenge. Everybody's gonna like have a different thing with beginner's mind that kind of pokes at, you know. For you it's correspondences. For me it's slowing down. I'm okay if the like heady airy bits of a deck or of a system don't make sense to me. As long as there is something that can make sense, whether it be the art or some, you know, because I can pull from other things, but it's when I have to like, I mean, really and truly, if a deck asks that I tie myself to a guidebook, I don't want to be a part of it. Like, to me, I can't read that if I'm constantly having to go back and read a guidebook. But what that asks though is time. That asks for me to spend time and to slow down. which I don't always like doing, I have to admit.
I made a video about odd, odd journeys with different tarot-ish decks, like last month or the month before or something. And in that video, I talked about startup cost. Like the challenge with some of these decks is they require an investment in startup cost. And if I haven't paid it yet, if I don't want to dedicate that mental bandwidth or that time that a deck really asks for, then it's just not the deck yet, right? Then it's not something I can be fluent with yet. I think beginner's mind, in the way that we're talking about it here, are those decks that, like, I'm not getting rid of them. It feels like there's something to do, but I don't want to pay that startup cost. And I'm not fully convinced. Should we just show some cards while we keep talking? Or
I think we need context. No, okay. I'm with you on startup costs though. I mean, it's like, so I'm a slow adapter of things. Danielle can attest. Like, she's known me for years now. And whenever something new comes out, I'll be like, oh, I really like that. And you're like, you should get it. I'm like, I don't feel like I have the bandwidth right now to invest in figuring that one out. So I am no stranger to the idea of startup costs, and using that as that's a barrier for me. I don't have it. I don't want to spend it sometimes, so I just don't. I have to be excited about that aspect. Like if a deck is going to ask me to invest some time in order to figure it out, then it has to be something that excites me, or I'm not going to do it. I mean, I think that's true of all of us, though. I don't think that's like a particularly odd behavior. Yeah, here's my question, which isn't on our list of questions, but I'm thinking of it now. If you have a deck in front of you that asks you to invest some sort of cost, or that it challenges your ideas, are you able to say, I see that this is doing something different, and set that aside and just read tarot the way that you know how to read tarot, just kind of placed on top of that deck? Or is that...
I know the answer to this question. I don't know if we're both thinking about Heindel, but let's talk about Heindel. We talked about that deck before. You were correct me if I'm wrong, but you were here for that deck. You were here to work with it as you work with the cards, and to just do, the cards, if you don't know the Heindel Tarot, among other things, and they're doing lots of things, have the hexagrams on all of the minors. That's a pretty novel thing. You do not see that on, I don't know that I've seen it on any other decks. Benabel's Spirit Keepers Tarot has trigrams, but these ones, Heindel's minors are no, this is hexagram 37, whatever that means. If it's on the card and you're insisting that I see that symbol, I'm struggling. I'm really struggling. My refusal to completely surrender to beginner's mind is what maintains my aversive relationship with that deck. So when we worked with it just as a kind of us studying off channel, having fun with the Heindel, I did release some of my tension, with you kind of walking me through the way you work with it, but not completely. That deck has, for example, titles on named court cards. So, I don't know, the Queen of Pentacles isn't it she the Spider Woman? She's Spider, they all
and you want to know what the references are.
And it's not just because I can learn, if the startup cost, the only startup cost was, I don't know that myth, go to the guidebook. I think that'd be fun. That's an opportunity to learn more myth. But you're putting hexagrams on all of the minors. I am still challenged even thinking of that deck. It's right over my shoulder. It's not going anywhere, but that is a deck that is a perfect example. So that all goes to say, in answer to your question, if a deck has wears its correspondences, for example, so is explicit about them. I don't really care about like the inner life of a creator and what they put in a guidebook. If you are externalizing these esoteric choices, so like I'm going to say that the Six of Stones, which is Six of Pentacles in that deck, is hexagram 37, that's a correspondence. And guys, I have no idea what the real hexagram, this is just a number that I'm picking out of thin air. No, I can't just
I mean, I actually don't know, because I've worked with that deck, and as much as like we've kind of played with it together, it like does he explains it though. There is explanation out there for why that's there.
He does. Yes. So like, and actually who explains it is Rachel Pollack, who co-created the deck with him. And we all know her to be a really good and complete and thorough writer. So in the little white book that you get with the deck, I'm pretty sure that it names the hexagrams. So you'll know that like hexagram 37 translates, the title translates to X, Y, or Z. And in the guidebook, there's like a paragraph explanation for that choice. So it's not that that's not an example of a deck that lacks internal consistency. It has a worldview. Like the thing is that I really don't care very much about the inner life of like a creator's correspondences. It's if you externalize these things because you really want me as the consumer, the person playing with your tool, to like engage with this symbolic like association, then there's something that like I have to make a decision about. I do not know the hexagrams by heart. I am irritated.
I can tell.
Irritated. It does it. I find it very triggering. People irritated.
She has triggered people. No, I mean, yes. So I mean, and to me, there's a difference between like a correspondence and like being able to set that aside and kind of like mapping on. So it's one thing to like be challenged by a correspondence that you don't understand, and it's another thing to map on, let's say like, you know, you want to map on the Golden Dawn correspondences onto a deck. Like I don't know, to me that's like kind of, I wouldn't do that. I don't do that. If a deck does not, I don't kind of bring other stuff from other systems and decks and things like that onto other decks that don't immediately say, hey, this is also a part of that tradition with that symbology. But I think we do differ in that way. Like I am perfectly fine. Well, to an extent, and we'll see. I am perfectly fine for the most part if there's enough other stuff going on with a deck aside from things that I don't know. I'm happy to kind of like work within that realm until I figure out the stuff that I do know. For example, Heimdall, you were so challenged. Like I see the hexagrams, I see that they are there. I do not know them, but there is enough other stuff going on visually and symbolically in those cards that is not just the hexagrams that I can say, okay, hexagram, I'm going to figure you out later, but this other stuff I'm going to work with. I don't know. Okay, let's go to our question. Why would you want to bring beginner's mind to tarot?
And you had added when we created these questions, is there a scenario when it's not the best choice? Like, which I think is a really good way to fill out that question. I think I would want to, because otherwise tarot would get really boring. If I was only like, I want to work with decks that I am fluent with, then like, great. I think there's certainly joy I find in working with decks that I have a rapport with. But there are certain kinds of work that's really great work that I can only do if I'm open to like a beginner's mind approach, either to decks that I know, but I'm going to approach with that framework, or decks that I am struggling with. This feels like Jacob wrestling with God. I mean, we are
Danielle, they're just cards.
they are just cards. You know, we talked before about like what is tarot? Are they just cards? They are just cards and also not just cards. They're ideas. Like I associate these cards with ideas. So it's ideas that I'm wrestling with. So there's that. Like if I want to grow as a reader, I don't think it's very helpful if the reason that I'm resisting is because I just don't like the art. That's just, there's no reason to force that. There's enough other art and other conceptualizations of tarot that I think like have medicine, you know, have a little something for me. So I think it's best to do if I'm like open to productive discomfort. I think it's not good if it's because I don't like the art, or sometimes, and the decks that I'll end up sharing can provoke a certain kind of tender work. And if you're not in a good place to do that work, then it's not a good idea. Like, I don't think it makes sense to. There's a certain vulnerability to beginner's mind, I think, and not every time is the right time to be vulnerable in a certain kind of way. I mean, tarot can get pretty in there in the stuff. So that's a way to, I think, to be thoughtful about when we're open to that kind of work. Yeah, how about you?
I mean, I think for me, there are certainly cases in which I wouldn't want to be in that like beginner space with tarot. I mean, obviously, professionally, don't want, you know, like if I'm reading at a market or something like that, like I'm not going to bring a deck that like that I don't know what to do with. You know, it wouldn't even, not sure that I would even bring the Heimdall because I don't feel totally comfortable with that. That as a deck. But I think also for myself and my personal work, there are times when I come to the cards when I want to have conversations with the cards. I don't want to learn the cards themselves. Like I want to learn things from the cards. I don't want to be, you know, to not know what's going on in front of me. So I mean that's definitely a scenario. There are like different ways to approach the cards. That's a good video. We should write this down. There are like different, you know, sometimes I come to the cards as a student and sometimes I come to the cards as a parent. And when I don't want to be a student, not a good time to pull up the deck or work with the system that is unfamiliar. Yeah. But no, I mean, I think I am always learning. How I read tarot is a synthesis of all of the things that I've learned about tarot. It is literally like I am working with like a Mary Poppins bag of all the stuff that I've learned. You know, when we started working with Tabula Mundi years ago, I did not have any of the Golden Dawn correspondences in that bag. And now I do, and they come out sometimes, not all the time, but they come out on occasion. And so I think beginner's mind is just like my willingness to put more things into that bag. And for that stuff to come out when it wants to and when it feels appropriate to. You know, I don't sit down with, you know, a historic tarot and bring Golden Dawn onto it necessarily, but sometimes I see it in other variations of tarot. And so like that'll come out and that'll get like brought out with it. But the more I can put into that bag of stuff, into that, you know, that like symbolic tool bag that I carry with me, the more kind of robust my reading can get across all types of tarot. Because it stretches my mind and it gives me more stuff to latch onto, more juice in a reading. It might not all come out. It doesn't all come out at all times, but it like the right stuff comes out at the right times. And this is when I am not reading with beginner's mind, but because I did all that beginner's mind stuff, I've now got things to carry with me when I am, you know, sitting down for a reading, whether it be for myself or for other people. All that stuff kind of comes out. If I didn't have beginner's mind, though, there would be like, that would be it. It would just, it would be what I know and nothing more.
I
And so,
really
like, yeah.
I like the metaphor of putting more stuff into your fool's knapsack, into your bag. Totally agree. And that reminds me of like learning tarot, because there was a moment when we didn't know that we would like tarot, but it was really fun to be a beginner. Like, we had beginner's mind because we had to have beginner's mind in order to learn. It's that fun headspace, that fun beginner's mind that I'm not really talking about because it's that fun. I feel like there is like therapy work for me to do, people, because all I can think of is like, there's that, and then there's the decks that I'm like wrestling with. That's the version of beginner's mind that I'm talking about and thinking about in this video. Like, the decks that I feel myself arm wrestling with because they insist that I have beginner's mind and I don't want to. But that's when the good stuff happens. There was a moment, I take this back. I really wanted to learn Tabula Mundi. I was really like eager to have beginner's mind to do that, Jack. I just found it kind of difficult and intimidating in the way that people, I think, tell themselves stories about how like Thoth is so hard. And when really it is hard, but it's also kind of whatever. But I was afraid I wasn't smart enough or something. That's one thing. Then there's like, no, I don't, I will not stand for your account of what the tarot is. I'm wrestling with that. So those are the decks that I'm going to be sharing, but let us go with the next question, which is our last question before we share decks. How do we get ourselves into that space? Like, how do you do beginner's mind if you have, when we have Heindel in hand? Or whatever. I'm thinking of Heindel because that's like the arm wrestling deck I chose. What is a deck that comes to mind for the version of beginner's mind? Is it Tabula Mundi or something like that?
I wouldn't say it's Tabula Mundi necessarily anymore. Although, it's what I did not bring, like the Thoth. I feel like the Thoth is the deck that like, and like variations on it are decks that like that's a system that constantly, every time I step into it, it doesn't matter how much I've studied, I'm rereading the Book of Thoth right now. I've already read it, but I'm rereading it now, and there's so much that I'm like, I don't think I got that the first time. Yeah. Like, I feel like that is a system. I could probably like get rid of everything else and study just the Thoth for the rest of my life and have more than enough to chew on. But that's a story for another day. But yeah, no, I mean, to get myself into, well, there are like a couple, it's like a perfect storm. I have to want to be there in the first place. So I try not, I mean, again, they're cards. And this is a choice that I am actively taking to put myself, to learn something new about this. And so for me, it's like I've got to have some motivation behind it. And if I'm not motivated, then I know it's not going to happen. And so there's some of it that's just like a natural desire to want to. And then there's also just a reminder that like, I am not, I am sitting down to learn about the cards, not to learn from the cards, Yeah. So I would never personally sit down with a deck that I know I'm going to have to like be in that beginner headspace for. Or even a book. Like if I were sitting down with just a tarot book that's like approaching tarot in a new way that I've, is like kind of gonna crack my mind open. I would never sit down with the cards for something that is really important to me. And, be like, talk to me about, my mother's health or something like that. Like I wouldn't, so I would be really mindful, or I'm really mindful about what I bring with me into that space. Kind of personal stuff doesn't come with me. when I'm getting into that beginner space. I don't know. What about you?
That's mostly true. There are some times when I actually find it helpful if it's not a beginner's mind deck that I'm wrestling with, but just one that like I've got to be open because it's doing its own thing and I'm excited to learn what that own thing is. When I would benefit from like an insistently empty-minded space, like I will come with preconceived notions. For example, if I do a reading about what's my deepest anxiety about this particular project I'm working on, like I can spin a tale about the Six of Cups in the Rider-Waite. I know that card backwards and forward. I could make up a story right now about what that card means, and I don't have it in front of me. And you could too, right? Like, you know that card. We know those cards. But if I'm using a Six of Cups in a deck that requires that I be open to its story, and it's not a story I recognize, but it's one that's like, let's discover this, there can be value in that. Like it's, but I'm not so vulnerable. I'm like curious, but there can be value in like, I can't bring my stuff. I can't spin a tale out of this because this is doing its own thing. So sometimes if I really need like a good kick in the pants, it's like the grandma, like your grandma that I listened to that I just met, and I know she's wise, and like I trust that you're like, this is a good lady, my grandma.
Here's my question. Is it just a deck that you go into like an experience of beginner's mind with? So something that comes to mind for me is Robert and Place's Tome. I'm not even going to try to do the title. It's Tarot, Alchemy.
It's like Tarot, Alchemy, and Neoplatonism, something like that.
Something about Hermeticism is in there too. Like that is a book that I know, deck notwithstanding, that I know I have to come to that book with beginner's mind. Like I have to kind of forget everything that I know about tarot in order to read that book. Is it for you? Is it just decks that bring up that beginner's mind with tarot, or is it, what is it?
Yeah, that's a good example of that does require beginner's mind that I embrace. And the only thing about that book, which I have read parts of, but not much of, like very much, not much of, is just an onboarding cost beginner's mind, like, so I'm ready to be a student. I'm like sitting in the seminar. I just haven't signed up yet, but I'm ready to like sit and learn. I think a good example of this, I read with Spirit Keepers Tarot, but like, dear Ben and Bell, when you and your encyclopedia, like I need to like take the PhD course, and she has given me the book to do that. So I don't feel like I have gotten everything that I can out of that tool, because she is ready. My fellow Queen of Swords, like Libran, is ready to teach me the beautiful knowledge that there is. I just haven't signed up for that course yet. I printed it out. It's sitting on my coffee table. But that will require a beginner's mind. Like I'm pretty sure that, who is it? Maria Prophetissima is like the Six of Swords. Like, let's do this. I don't know. I kind of know her story. I'm curious, like what it is that we're up to, but I'm really excited for that. I love story. And if what you're asking me, not you, but like a deck is asking me is like, let me tell you my story. You just got to be open to learning it. Cool. A deck that I'm struggling with right now, but beginner's mind in a cool way, is the Red Threads Tarot. So that's the creator of Red Seeds Tarot. I've been working with Ariadne. I mentioned that. Red Threads Tarot is her deck about Ariadne and Dionysus. It is story forward, right? Like in that deck, I would say the most important thing to her is to, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the creator's name, but is to foreground the story of Ariadne and then see like, how can we make the tarot archetypes do the work of this story? That's very story forward. I must approach that with beginner's mind. Like I would feel like ridiculous if I was like bringing my knapsack to the Six of Swords at all, because it's really doing its own thing. So that's a good example. Like I've signed up for that seminar right now. So like this brain can't do Robert M. Place and Bamboo right now. How about you?
Oh, I mean, for me, it is definitely like systems. New systems are always going to be like I'm a beginner's mind sort of thing. Like, when we were learning Tabula, well, you already had worked with Tabula Mundi, but our little book club was working with Tabula Mundi. That was a total like brand new system, and like it took me a couple of years to finally come around to not being angry.
Thank you. I feel like you're making me feel bad about Heindel. Thank you.
um, well, my whole thing was like prove it, like prove it, like, and not you, but
Yeah.
Golden Dawn, Whiteman of the late,
Yeah.
1800s, early 20th century. Like, why? Where
Sure.
did you get this from? And so it just took a lot of rabbit holing to finally understand the world that they had created, right? And what their worldview was mapped onto tarot, so that it could at least make sense to me. I don't necessarily always agree with it. But that's another interesting thing about beginner's mind, is that like I am willing to kind of set down all of my stuff to enter into somebody else's view of tarot, and consequently of the world. Oftentimes people's worldviews are mapped onto tarot, and that's where we get really unique, fun, and interesting things. I'm not always going to agree with it, but it's like I kind of have to put aside my disagreement and really buy into the conceit that somebody has created around tarot. And then after all of that is said and done is when I can go, okay, what's going in my bag? What's coming with me? There is not an author, a creator, a tarot person yet that I've been like, yeah, I'm 100% on board with everything that they have to say. There's that, like, that analogy of the bag, like the Mary Poppins bag that I bring with me is like, it's built off of kind of entering into these really intense study times and coming out the other side going, okay, I think I understand what it is that you're having, what you say. This is what makes sense to me and what I'm going to carry with me from this experience. But yeah, no, I mean, it's like systems, books. There are some books on tarot that absolutely challenge like my interaction with tarot. Ben Dove's book was one that like completely cracked my brain open. That was a total beginner's mind situation. There are decks, absolutely, that do that. I think like really anything can kind of conjure this for me. Yeah. I think I get most excited though about like system learning. That's where I get the most excited.
Would you call Red Threads a system?
Girl, I don't know.
This is an example.
I mean, yes, because I would consider like the Mythic Tarot is a system. Like it's like a subsystem. It might be under the umbrella of like Rider-Waite-Smith, but it really is telling its own story.
It does. It has its own scaffolding. I think that that's absolutely right. I am going to answer some really practical things as I show a deck. Is that okay with you? I'm going to show one of the decks. And it's a deck that I've shown before in my girls' weekend video, I think. Me and Barbara Walker. So here are some things. This is a trimmed edition of Barbara Walker. Barbara Walker is in print as a tin size deck, but has great big borders. So I trimmed mine. And here's the back. But here are some very practical things I do to like do beginner's mind. I do some seeing practices. So I will shuffle and reorder the deck an embarrassing number of times. Like just the intimacy with the actual cards really matters to me. And reordering them in a way I'm familiar with. So 0 to 22 or 21, all of the courts in order, all of the wands, cups, swords, and pentacles in order. And then sometimes I will shuffle and reorder so that all of the queens are together, all of the, nines are together, and look at those and see what they look like. Just that requires you to see the cards. And if you're really going to be a beginner, you have to force yourself to look. I also will look at the cards and say 3 to 5 things I notice out loud, because if I tell myself to just notice them quietly, I notice I don't do it. Like, I don't really do it unless I articulate out loud. So yes, my beloved will hear me talking to myself in the other room. I pretend I'm talking to the dog. I will make lots of kinds of piles. So light and shadow and the cards. The card, like some cards that are absolutely clear to me and some that I don't understand. I know that I've come to our book club meetings before with a like, help me with this 9 of wands, or like, you guys, I can't get past it. What's up with this? I will do an interview dialogue. So I'll bring my stuff, my beginner's mind questions to the cards. Like, why are you mad at me? Why am I've asked so many decks, why am I resisting you? Like, why is it that I'm resisting you? And I will read the front and end matter of a little white book and look up at least 1 major, 1 quart, and 1 minor so that I understand the language of like the creator's account of the architecture of a deck. So those are some very specific things I do, because that is a kind of forced encounter with the deck's story. But here's a little about Barbara Walker. I feel this deck is from 1986, and I feel attracted to this deck in theory. Lots of myth, very woman-centered, like the whole thing. The tone of this deck is so hostile and so dark. I mean, the Ace of Swords is titled Doom. Like, I can't. We're wrestling. This is a perfect example of a deck that we're wrestling, and I can't figure out, like, I like that the courts are named for mythological figures. I don't know how I feel about all of them. I also don't love her account of some of this stuff in the guidebook. If I don't really trust you completely, we're going to struggle there. So I'm on a struggle bus with this, but I can't let it go. I'll also modify a deck. That's something I do to like approach a deck with beginner's mind. So I'll continue showing these, but are there any actual practical things you would mention for people like with cards in hand that you do that's beginner mind kind of stuff?
For me, I mean, I am all about seeing what's in the cards. And so, yes, absolutely. I go through a deck and I will describe what I see. Another way is I am not a big spread person in my personal reading. I don't use spreads with assigned spots, but if I'm working with a deck, particularly a deck that has like a narrative story in each card, I'll use a spread as a way to kind of force me to start putting those cards in conversation with anything, even if it is just like a spread position that gives me like an opportunity to like have something for it to volley off of. Sometimes I will compare it to other decks that I'm either familiar with or even that I feel like fit within the world of what it's doing. So like if I've got like a Shira, I'll pair it with like Thoth because I feel like they sit in that same world or something like that. Yes. And like just looking at the cards a lot. There's a lot of looking. If there's a book involved, like if it's a deck specifically that I'm having to approach beginner's mind, if there's a book involved, so here's an interesting thing. I don't like going back to books to read cards. I would much rather just sit down and like read cover to cover. Because I find it cumbersome when I am reading to have to like refer back to a book. But if I've already read it once, I at least have some of that stuff banging around up in there, in the old mind grapes, and that stuff can start to come out in a practical way. Which is, and here's a book, or here's a deck that I brought with me, which is the Spirit Keepers Tarot, and I'm challenged by like the amount of material that's out there on it. This is very much about like an investment, like an overhead cost sort of thing, because there is a big book that comes with it. I know the Little White Book does some interesting things on its own, but I also know that a big book is in existence. I'm not going to show too much of this because we all know. We've all seen, if you're here, you've seen it. But I know that there's a big book, and I feel like I need to have at least some understanding of what Benabelle is doing with her deck in order to be able to read it, not even fluently, just slightly effectively. And it's like the investment of time. Because there's not just one big book. There are like books of varying sizes. And I feel like I have to invest a lot to be able to have any kind of a conversation with this deck. So this is one of those, it feels like it very much asks for beginner's mind of me, that I find really challenging. It presses into all of the things, like it pushes against all the things that like are my own stuff when it comes to reading tarot. Yeah. So yeah, I like to read like a book cover to cover. And so that is absolutely like a barrier for me. If there's a book that I just don't have the time for, or even just don't want to read, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Or even just don't want to read, then I'm challenged by that. Yeah.
Those courts still demand beginner's mind for me in a resistance kind of way. They are very, very non-traditional courts. She has a coherent account of why they work that way, but they are very different. And I have to just be willing to have no expectations of what the courts mean to be open to that story of the courts. And I find that difficult.
And I don't want to, kind of going back to what we were saying before, like, so court cards, for example, in this deck, they're renamed. I don't even know what they are renamed to, but I don't want to just be like, oh, I know one of them is the Herald. And I don't want to be like, oh, the Herald is the equivalent of, what is it, like the page?
That's the page. Yeah.
I'll just read it like the page. I feel like it really is, it is its own account of these 4 cards of the tarot, and it feels to me, for me, it feels dishonest if I were to read it knowing that it's not the same thing as if it were. So, and that is me. Some people have no problem being like, great, Harold's page, cool, and they run with that. I like, it's almost better. So like Kaz and Lar is a great example. It has a tiny little white book with it, and that's it. You know, it doesn't even touch on the astrological correspondences that are on the card. And like, for me, I'm like, cool. Then that means you release me of having to care about this.
Yeah.
Or of like feeling like I have to really understand them in order to be fluent with this. Like, so it's like the more information somebody puts out there about a deck, the more I'm like, okay, no, I have to engage with this, these things now, because I know there's information about it. Another example of a deck that I brought is the Tarot Balbi, which is, here, I'll get like really close. This is an out of print vintage deck, but it is the Utes Picard system. And but Utes Picard is the system generally is one that I have to bring beginner's mind to, because I know nothing. I know nothing about Utes Picard. And then this deck even veers from what Utes Picard does in its deck, especially with the majors and the correspondences. that are on that card. Like it does its own thing with the tree of life, and all of the Hebrew alphabet. Like it exists in its own world. And I want to come to this deck like I would a Marseille. I know that it's not just a Marseille. It's more. And so I feel like in order to be honest in how I approach this deck, I have to do a little bit of learning first. And so this is a deck that asks me to bring beginner's mind, to not just bring all my Marseille stuff with me and go, all right, let's go. But it asks me to gather some more tools to be able to read it effectively.
I'm always challenged. The cups and Youth Picard are air, and the swords are water. I don't know why that's like a hang-up for me.
Well, and again, talk about beginner's mind. It really asks that you like accept that, because there's also no escaping it. So, for example, here's the Three of Swords. We've got a fish.
Yes. There isn't any escaping it. And the thing is, if you wanted to read a Marseille, you have lots of Marseille decks to choose from. But if you pick that up, you're on a journey.
We have butterflies in each of the cups cards. Yeah, like this is like Youth's Picard is a system generally, but this deck in particular, within that system is like, so we've got death here with, what is that, Mars on it? Like
Saturn.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mars in the top right. Yep.
Okay. I don't know.
I love it. I almost brought Youth Picard, like the actual original Youth Picard, but I'm too excited to play with it. Like I've been playing with it to engage with the language of those minors, because I find them so beautiful and fun and different. But that was too much fun, beginner's mind. So the second deck I'm bringing is the Cagliostro Tarot. This also is very out of print and not a very talked about deck. So this is the back of the deck. There are a few different versions of this. This was originally published in 1912, and then there was a 1981 reprinting, as you will see. The majors are Art Nouveau with very novel associations. Here we're seeing like sort of familiar stuff with like, our Empress and Venus, but here is our Hierophant or Pope with Aries. This is an example of one of those decks that is absolutely transparent about its esoteric work, right? Like there is no escaping. It's not just telling you the astrological sign, it's telling you the dates. It's like, hey, idiot, in case you don't know when Gemini is, here's the association. And it has the title as well as the meanings or keywords on the top and bottom, not just of the majors, but of every single card, the minors too, and the courts. Here's a Hanged Man. This is what I mean by a deck that's difficult and aversive. This is kind of confronting people. So, that is our Hanged Man. That is a difficult card. That's difficult. Our keywords for that are that the upright fulfillment, moral sacrifice, physical sacrifice. This is Libra. In Golden Dawn, we would see this as water or Neptune. Reverse, useless sacrifice. Like the deck is pretty relentless. For the reversal, decline and revival. Okay. But you'll see the art style of the majors I find compelling, but not beautiful. Do you know what I mean? Like I find this really attractive and interesting to look at. YouTube isn't so funny lately. Let me cover her parts. But here she is, the world. Upright, the absolute, the microcosm, sure triumph, the association, the sun, and the reverse, struggles and obstacles before achievement. That's kind of, struggles and obstacles before achievement. Here we go with our minors. This is one of those decks that has a number 23 through 78. So some decks will do that. They'll number the minors. And They are completely different style. Here is the King of Clubs. We will not see that art style again. Here is the Queen of Clubs. Here are, and let's look at these titles. Upright Countrywoman. This is 4th through 10th of December. Reverse Domineering Woman. Here are the minors. Here's the thing, Amelia, I would live for this. I love like this account of TDM layouts. Like, I love this coloring. It's the keywords that drive me bonkers, and the dates. I just wish they weren't there. So upright, this 10 of clubs is genius work or leaving the country. Reversed is obstacle or hypocrisy. There's something very
It's like old school fortune telling decks. Like, if you see those like early 20th century fortune telling decks that have, it's like super specific, and it's usually on a pack of playing cards or something like that, or like all of the variations on like Lenormand style decks where there's like a symbol or whatever. Yeah, that's what that makes me think of.
What are your thoughts? I'll show some more minors, but like, it is, if there were no keywords, even with those associations, I think I would be like, let's do this. You are, fine. You're telling me that the Hierophant is Aries. I can get behind that. Like, that's interesting. I can do something with that. But you're telling me that the 10 of hearts is town, wealth, or friendship, or reversed indignation or loss of friendship. I just hate that it's on the cards. I hate it. I hate it so much because I find these TDM pips so fun. And I actually love the artistic incoherence of these minors and courts with those majors. There's something so idiosyncratically delicious about the whole thing. Like, it's so weird. But this is very old school Italian fortune telling. I mean, it was made, it isn't, I think this is published by US Games, but they borrowed it from an Italian publisher in 1912, Cagliostro, as we see. I mean, it's so weird and fun. It's so,
Yeah. Actually, that was so I had and traded away the Atea, the Grand Atea deck, because, and like, it really was that kind of like fortune telly,
yeah,
the keywords around the edge that I was like, I don't love this. I am not in this moment. This is not the moment for me to be in this deck. And so I traded it away for somebody who would enjoy that. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm not sure what I would do with that.
The writing is small and unobtrusive, and I have older eyes. So it's actually really easy the more time goes on for me to ignore the writing. So I have this out because I've wanted to work with it lately. And I've just been playing with the pips as TDM reading strategies or like reading play. And the colors are so fun. But I cannot, majors and minors, read those keywords. I will not do it. You cannot make me.
I think there would be something fun about learning those phrases really well and coming up with an account that kind of reconciles the phrases with other stuff,
Lovers or problems, upright. Or new interests, reversed. Like, the dates?
Fascinating.
This is the 9th through the 14th of May? Like, oh, really? It is? Anyway. All right. Here, I'll finish with the 2 of coins or 2 of diamonds, since that's always a fun card. All right. We've been going. Do you have any final comments before we wrap up?
No, I mean, I think you know, there is like an idealistic world in which I'm like, no, we always must always come to the cards with beginner's mind. But I think, you know, it's like with all things, there's a time and a place for it, right? And I think, but I do think it's important to like, even, I mean, you know, you and I have each been reading for a good long while now, and there's always more, there's always more stuff. There's always more stuff to learn and more stuff to be open to. I think that's the biggest, my biggest kind of takeaway is that like to not forget to be really open to the possibilities that lie within tarot and, you know, how others can interpret and present it in ways that might be surprising. Yeah, that's exciting. That gets me excited.
Same. I think I would just wrap up by saying that I think the key is for me to really be willing to humble myself before a deck. Like I really, in order to do Cagliostro, between these two, I'm most excited about Cagliostro. I have to be willing to just say like, okay, I guess that is the 9th through the 14th of May. Like, all right, I'm here for it. Like I will suspend everything that I think about date associations or no date associations with minors or, you know, making, what was your death card was Mars and Saturn. Like, okay, let's see what happens if we do that. But that really requires total submission before somebody else's set of ideas. And that's exciting, but sometimes I just want to say no. You can't make me. All right, guys, our collective question today is, I sort of said for me that I think the heart of this is humility before a different set of ideas. But in the big picture, for all of us, what is at the heart of beginner's mind? And like we like to do on this channel, each of us are going to pull one card and see what magic happens between the two. What is at the heart of beginner's mind? This is such a fun deck. And what is the colorful one that you have? The second one?
The Tarot Balbi.
Yes. These are just two really fun, unusual little gems. All right.
So I pulled the 5 of chalices.
I have the 3 of clubs.
This is the grotesque.
I like that on these cards, there are the little like flowers and curly cues and whatever included. I think that helps and keeps reading interesting. Should I look at these keywords, do you think?
Sure, tell us what they are.
Upright, this is enterprise and courage. Reverse, this is truce and improvement. I did not shuffle reverse. Don't shuffle reversals in. This is also the 3rd through the 8th of April, in case you're wondering. So enterprise, encourage, truce, improvement. This I like the word truce for this card. The idea of like coming to terms. It feels like it's saying the heart of beginner's mind isn't just sort of humble yourself before other ideas, but like meet the deck where it is. You know, like meet it on terms of equality. What does that say to you?
Well, and I'm even seeing that reflected here. If I were to just look at this visually, we've got our character here in the foreground being met by some sort of mythic figure in the background. I'm sure Benabel has a really clear account of who that is. I don't know. But we see these two figures just kind of like meeting each other across an expanse. And that star sitting in between them, it's almost like the magic happens when you are able to bridge that gap between where you are and where this other thing is, and you're able to meet together in the middle. And that like it's, you know, and even kind of going with like our 5 of chalices and this idea of the grotesque, like it's like The thing not to do though is to stay stuck where you are, right? Like that's this is the caution, is not staying stuck.
This is our base card. Tower, a warning against hubris.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at the heart of beginner's mind is like a challenge that you know everything, that you think you know everything.
That is a life lesson. That's, I think, a space in which tarot is teaching you about something that is so much bigger than tarot, which is like other ideas. Like your idea is good for you, set them aside. There is a magic to being willing to absolutely suspend your disbelief in service of like hearing a different account of how things work. That's a hard lesson in life, but it's certainly a fruitful one. Anything else before you take us home?
I think that's it. We will have all relevant information listed down below, but we'd also love to hear your thoughts about beginner's mind and like what does that bring up for you? What challenges does it bring up? What excitement does it bring up? We'd love to hear all about it. Yeah, we'll have everything about where to find us, as well as our new, shameless plug for our new learning intensives that we have live right now. We'll have that link down below so you can find those. And until next time, friends, we will see you in the lab.
Bye.